Hi, I'm Dana, and I'm once again doing the thing of assuming that if I have an issue, all other autistic people have an issue with it too. No, I'm not. I'm aware that all autistic people are different, but I do feel like when I have an issue and I talk about it on here, it tends to turn out that a lot of other people are feeling the same way, and it can create a discussion and we can figure things out a bit better. So that's what I want to do today, because I've been trying to set more boundaries lately to sort of not constantly be doing things I don't want to do and people pleasing people and being uncomfortable and being anxious when I don't need to be, because I could just set a boundary. Only it's not that easy is what I'm learning. You don't get to just set the boundary and everything's perfect. It's hard. It's difficult to set boundaries. And I've definitely been learning stuff that I think might be useful to share. But I definitely also have a lot to learn, a long way to go with it. And Otis, you are hurting my leg here, baby. No, not on my desk. You're going to cause a scene. So, I've got my notes. We're going to go through it sensibly and with reason and course. So, I want to start off with, it's hard to know what boundaries to set, isn't it? It's really difficult. Like, there's been so many times in my life that I've been uncomfortable. I've been anxious for the situation. And I just don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to say, like not even in the way of like how to set the boundary, but I don't know what boundary needs to be set to get me out of the situation. I so often feel like I've just landed in a situation, I'm just stuck with it now and I've just got to get through it, because I don't know what boundaries to set. And there's also a case of like, oh, he's gonna sit so cute. He's gonna sit right up where you can see it. Oh, what a good boy. But yeah, so it's also, sorry, that thoroughly distracted me. Look at this man. But as well as it being very difficult to figure out what boundaries to set, if you actually figure out some things that you think would be good boundaries, it can be very hard to know if they're appropriate or not. Because I feel like I often question myself and question how much I should be doing for other people, how much I should expect other people to do for me. I question everything all the time. My brain's constantly like in overdrive trying to figure everything out because I'm sure I'm missing something, because I usually am. So it's hard to know if I'm asking for like an appropriate thing. And I think that it's also very common for autistic people, I'm opening up a little more about my horrifically abusive relationship that I was in for 8 years. And I was consistently told that the boundaries I wanted to have in place to make my life a little bit less stressful, to protect myself a little bit, to generally be able to exist as a happy person, I was consistently told were like too much or too far or not something you could have as a boundary, when that's not true and not okay. And that means that like there's a lot of things that I've had to be told by people like, no, it's okay for you to ask that someone does this thing or doesn't do this thing, like that's perfectly normal and okay. And I'm like, no way. Could have done with knowing that a while ago, huh? But say you figure out the boundary and you're like, I've decided that this is an appropriate boundary that I feel is necessary for my life or for this relationship or for this friendship or whatever else. You're gonna go with it, You've then got to figure out how to communicate it. And that's tricky AF. And this is the part that I still really haven't figured out. I have tried so many times to express so many boundaries in so many different ways. And my experience is that people get real pissy about it. And I really don't understand why. Because whenever I've had someone try and express boundaries to me, especially if I've broken them, I want to know like how to not break that boundary again. I want to know what I need to do. I want to know what their point of view is on things. I want to discuss it and get the full picture of everything and know that I'm not going to fuck up again. But other people's reactions to me being like, yo, this is a boundary for me, tends to be to explode and things go really wrong. I've mentioned before, I was in a voluntary position when my boss started to just like talk to me in a not very nice way sometimes. So I brought up to him in what I thought was a very polite message, just like, look, I love working with you, but you're kind of talking to me in a shit way lately and I'd like it if you didn't. And that became a whole entire thing. I had a friend that would like consistently ask if my ex-boyfriend could like leave the house or go somewhere else or like just generally not be around her, which, to be fair, was her trying to express a boundary, but it's also like, you're coming over to the house that he pays your rent on, he's not going to leave because you don't want him here. And when I tried to be like, I need you to stop asking for him to leave because it makes me kind of sad and it really upsets him and we need you to stop asking this, blew up in my face and all fell to shit, you know? And there's been some more recent experiences that I'm not going to go into, but it does feel like that's just how it goes for me, and that's scary and disappointing. And, you know, I do think some degree of it is if they were better people, then they would respect and want, you know, if they cared about me enough, quite frankly, they'd want to respect my boundaries so that I was comfortable and happy around them. And they didn't care about me enough to do so, is what we're getting at. That's what you've got to accept. But there's got to be a way of communicating boundaries that's more efficient than how I've been doing it, which is, you know, communicating my boundaries. I don't really know how else I'm supposed to do it. I've often done it in messages, which may not be the best idea, because I know that when I'm doing like a serious communication via message, I do quite formal, and that tends to rub people the wrong way and put them off. And that's another frustrating thing though, because it's like, I can't help that. Like, I will edit and re-edit and re-edit and reread and re-edit and reread and re-edit these messages to try and make it sound the right way, to try and get across what I actually mean, to try and make sure it sounds like I have the best intentions, and it still rubs people the wrong way. I will pull the autism card there. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about that, because I am very much trying my best, and it's really frustrating to have people think that you're just trying to start an argument when you're literally being like, yo, I'd like you to treat me with like some respect. I'd like you to stop walking all over me. There has been the odd time though that I've communicated a boundary and it's actually gone well. It's just always a shocker. It's always a surprise. However, the thing that then comes with that is that you've got to sort of like enforce and maintain the boundary. And again, I think some degree of this is that I've not been around the best of people, so they did push at boundaries and want to like consistently bring them up to rediscuss boundaries and didn't respect my boundaries essentially. So it felt like I constantly had to reinforce them and maintain them and make sure they were still being understood and make sure that like I was constantly bringing them up and reminding people of it, you know, especially with my family. Like, it just wasn't listened to or paid attention to, and it meant that I was constantly having to bring it up and constantly having to like re-communicate these boundaries of mine, and that's not how it's supposed to be. But I feel like it's probably something that a lot of us experience, and it's something that a lot of people do, you know. Like, I've just known so many people that will like pretend to accept and respect a boundary, but then like repeatedly push at it and like nibble away at it until it's not really there anymore. And I think that like as autistic people, we are often just a bit more prone to that happening to us and coming across those people and being quite vulnerable in these types of situations. I'm gonna stop doing the spinny thing now. I'm gonna pull my legs back up so I can't spin. I'm sorry. I want to round this video up because like obviously I've talked a lot about like my boundaries and how we can enforce our own boundaries and making sure people like we are communicating our boundaries to people and the like, but also sometimes other people set boundaries with us. And I think that like as an autistic person, it is something that both makes me anxious and brings me a degree of joy, honestly, because I know that for me to communicate boundaries I have to be quite comfortable around someone, and I also have to care about them quite a lot, because I'm getting increasingly quick to just stop talking to people. And I've done it a lot with people that like I barely know, but now it's like people that I know reasonably well. Once they've like started pushing at boundaries and not respecting them and shit, I'm just like out. So yeah, I like to know that people feel like safe and comfortable enough to bring up their boundaries to me, but it's also anxiety inducing, because if someone's bringing it up, it probably means that you've overstepped and broken a boundary. And that's where I've had a lot of issues with people thinking that I've like intentionally overstepped and intentionally broken these boundaries and just not cared and not respected them. And all too often it's that I just completely misunderstood what their boundary was, you know? A lot of people don't communicate things in clear language for a start. Like, I don't mean to automatically blame other people and like victimise myself, but I do need things to be explained fucking clearly. And people don't like doing that. They like to beat around the bush and use little metaphors and do all sorts of things to not just say what they mean, which means I don't know what they mean. You know, and I've had that used against me a lot when people are then like, oh, well, you ignored my boundary around this, and I'm like, that was a boundary? Or more often, I understood that they were setting a boundary because they communicated that part clearly, but they didn't really communicate what the actual boundary is. So I've done something they didn't want me to, and I didn't even fucking know that I was doing it. And yet it's made to seem like it's your fault. The majority of times though, I will ask questions and I will try and make sure that I understand. And once I feel like I've got a grasp on it, if I have overstepped or broken a boundary, I will do my best to apologise in like a sincere way, you know, like a genuine apology. It sounds so weird and formal and mechanic and robotic and like I'm just doing what you're meant to do as a person when you like talk about it in a video like this. But like, you know, these will be people I care about. I don't want to overstep boundaries or upset them in any way. So it is a genuine apology if I have. You know, and I'll go out of my way to not do it again, provided it's an appropriate and fair boundary. And I think more people need to do that. Like, I very much go for like, be what you want to see in the world and all that. So I hate being like, more people need to be like me. But like, it's not that hard, you know? Like, I've got plenty of people in my life now that could do it and have done it, and like it's really not that difficult, and yet people really struggle with it, and it really fucking annoys me, it riles me up, and it pisses me off, as many things do we've learned through these videos. I get annoyed quite a lot, don't I? Like, sheesh. But yeah, that's my little thoughts, my little ramble, my little tangents. It really is it, that's the lot. I, as always, would love to hear what you think, what your experiences have been, if you've got like any like hints and tips. I don't know. Boundaries are hard, setting them, maintaining them, keeping them, like putting them up for people, figuring out what they're going to be. It's all quite difficult. But I think it's one of those things that we do really need to learn how to do. And I think it's something that everyone needs to learn how to do, but autistic people especially, I think, can often have our boundaries pushed and bent a little more than a lot of people would. So I think it's an important discussion topic. And Otis is screaming to get out of my room now, so I am actually going to go. No, I'm not. I'm a promotey person now. Fuck. I've got Patreon. You can become a channel member. There's all sorts of stuff going on. You'll get your name at the end. You'll get like little perks and stuff. It's a fun time. Otis is like cheering it on in the background. Like, he's so into it. You should do it. They'll be linked below, along with all of my like links to social media, a link to my Ko-fi if you wanted to donate there. I've got too much spit in my mouth. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I will see you again in a couple of days.